Special thanks to Reptilia28 for the story. Please check him out in the description below. Now on to the story. The click-clack of talons against steel echoed as Ambassador Dralix walked down the hallway to the meeting room. His people, the HFY, had been fighting in the courts for years over the colonization and mining rights of a few choice planets with the humans, a relative newcomer on the galactic scene. The system that the planets were in happened to be, celestially speaking, equidistant from the two species' territories, and had happened to discover them at roughly the same time, hence the confusion over who exactly possessed the rights to them. As the processions dragged on, relations between the two races were growing increasingly tense, to the point where the two powers were on the verge of taking their battles out of the courtroom and onto the battlefield. Such an event would surely end in the HFY's favor, for they possessed a military presence almost 10 times that of the humans. Dralix figured that that was why the humans had called this meeting one last desperate bid at peace to avoid entering a war that they knew they could not win. When he entered the room, he saw his human counterpart sitting alone at a table. Next to him was a metal case, too small and bulky to contain any diplomatic documents. The quills on Dralix's head shuddered in confusion. "Ah, Ambassador Dralix, glad you could make it," the human said cheerfully as he stood up and bowed with his palms up, a formal HFY greeting. "Ambassador Whitman," Dralix replied evenly as he returned the gesture. "To what do I owe the pleasure of this meeting? Have your leaders finally realized that those planets are ours by right?" he asked as he took a seat opposite of the human. "Nah, the suits are still insisting that we found them first," Whitman replied with a dismissive wave. "But that's not why I called you here. Tell me, Ambassador, are you a betting man?" he asked as he opened his case and began to pull out stacks of colored plastic discs. After a moment for his personal translator to explain the idiom, Dralix replied, "If you are asking if I wager commodities on the occurrence of statistically unlikely events, then no." Whitman made a non-committal hum as he continued to lay his plastic discs out. "So I'm guessing you've never played poker then?" he inquired casually. "No, I have not," Dralix replied, beginning to lose his patience. "Is there a point to this conversation?" he demanded, not quite snapping. "There is," Whitman assured him as he drew a pack of cards from the box. "Care to play a few hands with me?" he asked. Dralix's jaw nearly dropped in surprise. His species was on the verge of war, and this glorified ape wanted to play a game. "Don't worry, it'll make sense in a few minutes, I promise," the human ambassador insisted. Dralix fought the urge to sigh in annoyance. If playing this silly game would bring the human to his point, then he would humor him. "Very well. How do you play?" Dralix asked evenly. In response, Whitman handed him a sheet of paper detailing the rules of the game. For the next few minutes, the only sound in the room was the bird of cards slapping against each other, Whitman shuffling while Dralix pored over the rules. The rules seemed simple enough, and once Dralix had nodded to confirm his readiness, Whitman slid some of the chips over to him. The HFY noticed with some confusion that his portion was significantly larger, at least double, what Whitman kept for himself. After shuffling the cards one last time, Whitman dealt out 2 cards for Dralix and 2 for himself. Dralix picked up his cards and looked at them. A 3 of hearts and an 8 of spades. Not the best starting hand. "You're aware of the rights of conquest, are you not, Ambassador Dralix?" Whitman asked as he placed the first bet, a single red chip. "I am," Dralix replied as he matched the bet. The rights of conquest was one of the few parts of galactic law that those who were not employed in law or politics were aware of. While the details were somewhat more complicated, in essence it meant that, in the event of a war between two powers at the end of hostilities, the possession rights of any enemy worlds that the victor had conquered remained with them unless they were transferred back to the loser. "And do you know of how we humans arrived on the galactic scene?" Whitman asked, as he began to lay cards on the table between them, a 4 of clubs, a 5 of spades, and an 8 of diamonds, promising. Yes, Dralix replied as both players threw 2 more red chips into the pot. The Yifra tried to invade one of your outer colonies, so you retaliated by capturing their homeworld and bartering it for the rest of their colonies. It was an impressive feat for a race that had yet to even leave their own home system at the time. And nearly doubled our holdings overnight, Whitman concluded with a proud smile as he laid down another card, 10 of clubs. Whitman wagered 4 red chips. Dralix decided that it was unlikely for him to get a winning hand at this point and folded. The cards were shuffled and a new hand was dealt, jacks of spades and diamonds, a much better hand. We kept going and founding new colonies. We would run into the occasional group that wanted a piece of us, but we would keep beating them and take a few worlds as spoils. Whitman continued as he wagered 2 red chips. Dralix raised the bet to 5, which Whitman matched. Most of them, you mean, the HFY interjected as Whitman laid down the cards. Queen of diamonds, 4 of clubs, ace of clubs. As I recall, you lost your conflict with the Barthu, he continued as he wagered 10 chips, confident in his hand. The next card, jack of clubs. Dralix tried not to seem too pleased at this development. True, that was a disaster, Whitman sighed as they placed their bets, and he laid the final card down, 2 of diamonds. After the final bets were made, they laid down their cards. Whitman had a 2 pair of 2s and aces, but lost to Dralix's 3 of a kind. As the HFY swept his earnings to his side, Whitman added, "But we learned from that." A few hands quickly turned into a few hours, with the 2 dignitaries discussing humanity's rise in the galaxy to their current state of controlling nearly 80 worlds, an impressive amount for a race that had been around for a relatively short period. As the 2 talked, they continued to play, the fake money ebbing and flowing like a tide from one player to the other until their holdings were nearly equal. And surprisingly, Dralix found himself enjoying the game. More than just a game of probability, it was a game of wits, of trying to convince your opponent that you had a better chance of winning than you did, while also trying to discern if your opponent was doing the same. While I have enjoyed this game and this conversation, the HFY said, I believe that we have diverted from the original purpose of this meeting. One more hand, then we'll get down to business, he offered. Sure, Whitman agreed as he dealt out the cards. Dralix looked down at his cards. 10 of diamonds and 8 of clubs, not a bad start. The bets were made and the first 3 cards were laid out. Queen of spades, ace of spades, 8 of hearts. You know, people always say that war is like chess, but personally, I think it's more like poker, Whitman said as he placed his bet. Oh, how so? Dralix asked as he matched the bet, and the 4th card revealed 10 of hearts. Because for all the planning and strategizing, in the end, the conflicts boil down to surrender or we'll blow up your planet, Whitman explained, briefly affecting a gruff voice as he placed his bet. About a quarter of his chips, a bold move. But most times it's a bluff, because no one wants a planet that they can't live on. The wager was matched, and the final card revealed 10 of spades. Dralix fought the urge to bear a face-splitting grin at the full house that he had. Your people are good at numbers, Ambassador, so tell me this. Whitman's voice knocked Dralix out of his euphoria. If we went to war right now, what are the chances of my people winning? Dralix thought back to the statistics that he had seen and recalled that the odds of the humans winning in a conflict were approximately 1 in 2.73 billion, and informed his opponent of that. He hummed unconcernedly as he pushed the entirety of his chips into the center of the table, surprising the HFY. You're bluffing, he accused bluntly, earning a shrug in response. Maybe, Whitman said vaguely. If I recall correctly, there's about a 1 in 2-point-something million chance of me having a royal flush right now. Now, statistically speaking, you're right. I'm probably bluffing, but maybe I'm not. You see, my people like numbers, too, and here are a few for you. The Blura Offensive, 1 in 10,000. The Risa Initiative, 1 in 34,000. The Shinxa Crusade, 1 in 4.6 million. Those were all conflicts that Whitman and Dralix had discussed, over the past few hours. Conflicts that all involved humans. Conflicts that they had all won. War is like poker, Ambassador, and this hand we're playing is just like the situation we find ourselves in now. If we go to war, yeah, odds are we'll probably lose, badly. But we humans like to play the long odds. Go big or go home, as they say. We'll look at terrible odds and think, it's got a 1 in a million chance. Ain't no reason I can't be that one. Dralix looked at Whitman, more specifically that calm, serene smile that had not left his face once during the entire game, and suddenly felt a chill creeping down his spine. Just like I went all in just now, if we go to war, humanity will muster all of its strength to fight you. And just like you won't know if I'm bluffing or not unless you go all in yourself, your people will have to muster all of their strength in turn to beat us. And whether it is by luck, providence, or just a really powerful top-secret super weapon that you don't know about, there's still that infinitesimally small chance that despite it all, you'll still lose, and lose big. Then, in a tone that seemed to echo throughout the room while still remaining perfectly level, he said, "So I ask you again, Ambassador Dralix, are you a betting man?" You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and wants to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel. And for every comment that comments I enjoyed the story, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.